Women are more sensitive. We're more sensitive to blue light. When we not only get all this blue light and all of these signals from the sun or the light through our eyes, but we also get it through our skin. And women's skin is thinner than men's skin. So women tend to be more affected by blue light. They're more affected by the non-native EMFs.
Awekenge, this is Mental Mythos, hosted by Asego.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Mental Mythos. I'm your host, Asego. And before we dive into today's incredible conversation, I have a small favor to ask. If you enjoy what you hear today, please take a moment to rate and review our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but also helps others discover the valuable insights we share every week. And if you find today's episode particularly inspiring or insightful, don't forget to share it with your friends, family, or anyone you think could benefit from it. Thank you for your support. It truly means the world to us. Now, let's get back into our conversation.
To me and to people out there, who are you and what do you do? On top of that, why do you think that the work that you are doing is important?
Well, my name's Joanna Swanson, and I am a menopause educator, a counselor, and a coach. And my journey to get here has been a long one. I studied psychology. I have a degree in psychology, and then I ended up going into education and getting a master's in education. And I was an elementary school teacher for 20 years. When I was 37, I was informed that I had the BRCA gene mutation and that my chances of getting breast cancer and ovarian cancer were extremely high. And so my doctors suggested that I get a double mastectomy and a full hysterectomy where they removed my ovaries and my uterus. And this was all preventative so that I wouldn't get cancer. Within that process, no one prepared me for getting my ovaries removed. No one really sat me down and explained to me what that really meant. All I was told was that, I would be put on hormone replacement therapy and that I could just go on with my life. And so after I had all those surgeries, which actually ended up having 7 surgeries within a year and a half because I had complications with the mastectomy. Once I had my hysterectomy and oophorectomy, where they take out, oophorectomy is when they take out your ovaries. I had just a really hard time going from being a person who was so well balanced emotionally, who'd never had PMS, to then immediately after that surgery, I started having a cyclical kind of what I had always heard of as PMS. And it was just so strange because I was thinking, how am I having PMS? I'm not even menstruating anymore. And that was just kind of the beginning of me going through all of these symptoms that were very emotional. From there, I became very anxious, where I've never had anxiety before. I became very depressed. I developed severe rage, brain fog. Everything that made me was gone. I felt like so betrayed by my body and my brain. It was a really, really dark time. And my doctors just shrugged their shoulders and just said, well, you're on your hormone replacement. We don't know. Do you want antidepressants? I said, no, I don't want to go on antidepressants. And so that's where my journey started. And I did a lot of research. Luckily, I was able to, my father, he's a physician, and he helped me test out different types of hormone replacement until I found the one that worked for me. And so once I had my hormones in better order and I started to feel more like myself, then came the second wave of really dealing with the grief and the emotional piece of being in menopause, of coming into the acceptance that, okay, great, I'm not rageful, I'm not depressed, I'm not anxious anymore, but I'm not how I was before either. And once I realized that there was a really important grieving process that I needed to go through, that's when everything changed. And that's when I was able to really thrive again, because instead of always looking back and trying to go back to who I was and how I moved through the world, I was able to look forward and take what I'm working with now and make the best of that and to move into the future. So I decided to quit my teaching career and dedicate myself to getting training in menopause care and coaching and life coaching, and then also pursuing a certification in quantum biology. So I really just feel that there was so much unnecessary suffering that I went through, and there's no reason for anybody to have to go through what I went through, especially after all that I've learned now.
And you mentioned PMS. What is that?
Premenstrual syndrome. So here in the United States, it's very common that women during before they menstruate every month, you have going through different symptoms, whether they're physical or emotional symptoms before menstruation. And that all has to do with the fluctuations of our hormones at that peak before we menstruate.
And you want to say something?
No.
Oh, and I just want to actually say something to add something that you said. Funny enough, I had a guest yesterday by the name of Lorid, and wonderful guy. And actually, we spoke about, I would say, similar conversation, but in the perspective of, I would say, that chronic illness and that thing of nutrition. And whereas doctors can say that, in a way, I would say that they say that they're giving you this and you need to take it, and without actually asking you questions. Same goes with you, and they didn't actually tell you in terms of they actually didn't explain it to you that actually that you need to do this because of this and this and this and this. And the guest, the read, say actually made a joke where he says that every time doctors actually heal, actually instead of looking at the cause, at the root, they actually look at the symptoms. Every time a symptom, let's say you have a headache, they give you pills. And for an example, let's say that instead of pills, they remove your limbs. Let's say take out your brain. And if you have a fracture, a fractured bone, they take up your bone. You'll be left. They would actually there is no sense on top of that. And I just wanted to add on that what you've said, and it's something that what actually I love the work that you're doing in terms of education, because at some point that we don't actually dedicate ourselves into in a way of education, will say nah, someone actually will advocate for them. And sometimes it's hard to actually stand on the sidelines and actually not experiencing it. I love the fact that your personal story actually really pushed you into actually talking about this. And
Mhm.
I don't know about America, but here in South Africa, it's quite interesting when it comes to problems with women. It's not something that it's I would say taken in high regard. It's not a priority because
Mhm.
most of the thing it's all about business. Whereas, for example, there are girls out there that actually one of the still moving conversation is pads in a way of some people can't afford them because in a way of life poverty, and at some
Mhm.
point that the government doesn't put a lot of effort on, and it's something that I was part of. Gladly Paul was part of, was so lucky to be part of actually trying to they have that pet drive and actually just giving back to the community and able to do that. And you mentioned something, quantum biology.
Yes.
What is that?
So quantum biology is the study of our biology through the lens of quantum, which is the smallest parts.
Mm.
Okay. So like you have quantum physics, it's the physics, and you're looking at everything through at the level of the protons, the neutrons, and the electrons. Quantum biology is looking at our biology and looking at where is the energy coming from. Okay. When we think about being a human, we think, okay, well, yeah, I need energy so that I can live, right? And anything needs energy. And so it's like, well, where does that energy come from? And what's the first thing that you think of? Where does the
From the sun.
energy? Okay, that's good. Most people will say food, right? Energy comes from food. And then you go down from there. Okay, well, how does the food get the energy? Okay, well, let's say you eat strawberry, it comes from the sun, right? And then, so how are we getting energy into our bodies to make our bodies, and more importantly, our mitochondria function properly? And so then you look at, well, what is in our environment that is getting in the way of our bodies functioning properly? So we look at 3 areas: light, magnetism, and water. These are the 3 areas of quantum biology that we study in order to really break down how our bodies function and what is getting in the way of our bodies functioning properly. And one of the easiest things to start with is light, because we live in an environment where we have artificial light. And artificial light is making us sick because the light from our light bulbs, especially if they're LED lights, the frequencies of energy that come from those artificial light bulbs, they're artificial. We would never in nature be under that specific frequency of light that is so narrow and so high in the blue range of light. Sunlight is all of the colors of the spectrum of the rainbow. Every time that we're outside, we're getting all of those frequencies of energy. But when we are inside in light that is artificial, we're just getting one portion of that whole spectrum. And that is giving signals to our body to do things that are not in sync with nature.
And how does that actually play in role when it comes to menopause?
Okay, good job. So Our eyes are hormone-making organs. We have specific cells in our eyes that are made to respond to all of the different frequencies of light that come from the sun. And when we're exposed to artificial light from LED lights, and that blue light that's between like 420 nanometers to like 480 nanometers, scientists know specifically which cells in our eyes respond to those frequencies of light. And that sends signals to our brain to release cortisol. And when our brains release cortisol is a hormone. It's considered a master hormone. When our brain releases and our bodies release cortisol, it puts us in fight or flight, and our body does not care about any of the other hormones. It doesn't care if we're fertile. It doesn't care if we want to reproduce. It doesn't care about our sex. All our brain is focusing on is cortisol. So that we say it's a master hormone, and your sex hormones are downstream from cortisol. And so if your cortisol is high, all of those other hormones, they're not communicating with your brain. They're out of sync. Your brain just thinks, oh no, I have to be in fight or flight. I have to survive. I don't care about anything else. The other thing that happens when cortisol is high is that your brain does not release melatonin. And melatonin is another hormone that is kind of the opposite of cortisol. So cortisol, we do need some cortisol because we need to be awake. We need to function. We need energy. And that's what that cortisol does. But once the sun starts to set, our cortisol is supposed to go down and our melatonin is supposed to rise up. If you look at ideal levels of cortisol and melatonin, they should follow the pattern that the sun takes across the sky. That as soon as the sun starts rising, your cortisol should start rising just in that same amount. When the sun is at the highest in the sky midday, that's when your cortisol should be the highest. And then as the sun starts to set, your cortisol goes down, and then your melatonin starts to rise so that you can fall asleep and you can get into repairing at night. And the reason why those patterns follow the sun is because our eyes are what is receiving the sunlight and what is telling our brains to produce the cortisol or to produce the melatonin.
And speaking on light, and definitely I actually mentioned circadian rhythm. And in a way of I want to touch on that artificial light. How do we make sure that we actually use the right light? Because the reason why I'm asking this, because I have a light. Let me show you. I have this light, and this it's for content because it has a different type. I would say. Let me show you. Probably you can see it. It's flat. The picture is flat, but I can, in a way of adjust its kind of lights, and in a way of I can tone it down and move it up. Whenever I move it up, the higher the maximum. I think the maximum light, actually, the minimum is 5,600. In a way of, I'm not quite sure about the numbers when it comes to light.
So when you're looking at light, you have like the lumen is how bright the light is.
Okay,
that's brightness. That's different than the frequency. The frequency of light is measured in nanometers. So there's two things that you're looking at: lumen, which is how bright it is, and then nanometers, which is what frequencies of light are in the light that you're shining. The sunlight has frequencies all the way, from like, it starts at 0 really, but it can go all, you have like the blues and the greens and just like a rainbow. And when you get up to the yellow, orange, and red, those are the higher frequencies that are the healing frequencies. And then, so any light bulb, like you can go on Google and you can Google the light profile for an LED light, and it shows you a picture of, it's like a graph of how much of it's blue light and how much of it is yellow light and how much of it is red light. And an LED light is very much, it's a big spike in the blue and then very little here. If you look at incandescent light, which is like the old kind of light bulbs, those are a lot better than the LED lights. Because they have a lot more red in them. But even still, it's not the same as sunlight. Sunlight has all of those frequencies, and they all are balancing each other out in specific ways. Even though the sunlight has, at certain times of day, is going to have a lot of blue light compared to the other frequencies, those other frequencies are still there. And it's never just that spike in blue light the way it is with an LED light, with the way it is on our phone, with the way it is on our TV, with the way it is on our computer screens. All of those LEDs are very high in the blue light range. So the best thing that you can do is to get yourself glasses. And there are a lot of glasses out there that plain block blue light, but you really have to get the specific ones that block the correct nanometer of light. So these are my daytime glasses because I'm inside, because I'm looking at this screen. I put these glasses on to block that blue light so that my cortisol doesn't spike too high. And then once the sun goes down, I have my red ones, and they're really dark and red, and I put those on. Just because I have artificial light on in my house, or if I'm going to do any work on my computer, if I'm going to watch a show on TV, I put on the red glasses. That way it keeps my cortisol down and it lets my melatonin start to rise.
And I had a guest, and we actually spoke about, our conversation revolved around nutrition and circadian rhythm. And whereas we emphasized on the light, and something that he actually amazed me, and when that during that time, imagine I didn't even know what was circadian rhythm, and he said that he spoke about different locations when it comes to the sun, and for example, I'm in Africa, I'm South Africa, and it's definitely different compared to America. And in terms of the light, the types of this, how hot the sun is, and things like that. And he spoke about people in the corporate that they have a bad advantage when it comes to actually receiving the sun, when it comes to actually benefiting from the circadian rhythm. So to women that are in corporate world, within definitely in offices, whereas towards our conversation when it comes to menopause, how can they benefit from when it comes to circadian rhythm?
So again, it's really important to have these glasses. You wake up in the morning. If you are awake before the sun rises, you need to protect your eyes with the dark sunglasses. Once the sun rises, go outside or open your window without the glass, not just the drapes or the curtains. You need to open the window because when the sunlight comes through the window, it blocks some of those good frequencies. So open the window all the way. You need to expose your eyes to the sun for at least 10 minutes during the sunrise hours. Okay, this is it's the algorithm for all of the hormones in your body, that sunlight. It's the code, tells your body what time of day it is. It tells all the cells in your body what time of day it is and what body systems need to begin producing hormones. So some of my clients, they're awake before the sun, they're getting ready for work, they're getting their kids ready for school. And so I have them wear their red glasses. When the sun comes up, if they can't stand outside for 10 minutes while they eat their breakfast or something, then I have them on their way to work, roll down the windows in their car. If it's cold outside, keep your heater on, but roll those windows down just enough. If you can just roll your windows enough, you will fill your car with all of those frequencies of light to get your algorithm going for the day. When they're at work, wearing their blue blockers. Everywhere. Anytime you're inside an artificial light, wear those blue blockers all day. And, it used to be that people would take breaks every hour to smoke a cigarette, right? Well, instead of taking a smoke break, take a sun break. Take a sun break, go outside, lift, roll up your sleeves, roll up your pants, and get some sun on your body. Okay? And then, depending on what time you leave, it's just like it's really good to get that sunrise sun, it's really important to get the sunset sun. So if you're at work, again, go outside for those sunset hours, open your window. If you're in the car during sunset, roll down your windows and get some of that sunset sun, because again, this is the algorithm. This is the code to tell your body what time it is and what needs to start happening.
And what kind of actually you answered I was about to ask a question that you answered. I'm quite fascinated about the sunset sun, and people would actually will be why, because the sun is setting in a way of because it's gonna be at night, and what kind of benefits that I will get through that, because sometimes we are aware when the sun is up, so we actually receiving the sun because we just woke up. How is it? What is the difference in terms of, would you say there is the difference between actually receiving the sun when it's up compared to receiving the sun when it's going down?
The easiest thing is that those frequencies of light is the code that's telling your body what time of day it is. And every part of the day your body has different systems that are doing different things to make your body run optimally. So most specifically so we have on the bottom of our eyes are the different cells that respond to the sunrise frequency. And on the top of our eyes, because that's when it's setting low, you have the cells that respond to the frequencies that are sunset. Those frequencies of sunset are telling your brain to start releasing melatonin. Melatonin is what helps you fall asleep. But even more importantly than falling asleep is staying asleep, getting into deep enough sleep to have your brain kick in what's called the glymphatic, not lymph, but glymph. Okay, this is a process in your brain where we always have cerebral spinal fluid in our brain. But when you're in deep enough sleep, when your melatonin raises high enough, it kicks in your lymphatic system, which makes that cerebral spinal fluid increase by up to 80%. When that fluid increases that much, it goes into all of the little crevices in your brain and it cleans out your brain. Our brain is full of electromagnetic, electricity all day, and all of these neural connections that leave a little bit of kind of like a residue behind. Just like when you strike a match and you get a little bit of the residue, our brain is going right, and it leaves a little bit of residue. When your lymphatic kicks in, it cleans all of that out so that when you wake up the next day, you feel alert. You have a good memory. You feel a good mood. But you might be falling asleep, but if your lymphatic system isn't kicking in while you're asleep, you're not doing all of the repair that you need to do while you sleep. And remember, to get your lymphatic system to kick in, your melatonin has to be high enough.
And I feel like we have a real problem when it comes to sleeping, and definitely social media. And we have this tendency of actually, in a way of while you were explaining it, I really realized that is that blue screen, and definitely is that thing of always looking at your phone, always scrolling on social media, on actually trying to actually, again, that dopamine, and actually wanting to enhance that dopamine. And it's something that is very alarming and very scary. And someone that I listen to, Dr. Huberman, and he regularly speaks about circadian rhythm, where he started saying, he says this thing of actually for you to live a better life, have cold shower, receive enough sun, and eat healthier, and you'll have, actually I forgot, working out. And something that I've seen within myself, and you spoke about brain fog. Brain fog is something that is real, and people don't realize it, and probably they actually experience it, but they don't know what it is. Because I have had brain fog for many times, because as a student and being studying, and at some point in a test, I actually tend to forget things. And ever since I started to do actually the cold shower, in all honesty, it's very hard. It's very hard. And it doesn't get better. It doesn't get better, because I've been doing this 3 or 4 weeks. It doesn't get better. I've done it, and it doesn't get better to me. I don't know a lie. And even today, actually.
How is your breathing? Are you focusing on your breathing when you're doing the cold shower?
It's a thing. I'm not focusing at anything. I'm actually focusing on the water.
Okay, but if you focus on your breath, it will help with the cold. It will help you withstand the cold.
I feel like by default, I'm focusing on it because I remember today, and usually instead of to actually surprise my body, I start with warm water and just twist it and twist it and twist it. Today, I just started with a warm water and twisted it hard, and I find myself breathing so hard, and realize that, oh, flip. And instead of actually getting out of the way, actually I stayed, and that was there was something that was different. And one thing I realized after that, I was fresh, and I had a long day. I took that shower, and I was fresh. I don't want to lie. I was fresh, and it's something that I just want to say, that to actually speak on that. When it comes to your clients, do you actually refer in terms of recommend such thing as cold showers being part of that circadian lifestyle?
Yeah. So I have a history of doing breath work and cold plunges. And I think for women who are in perimenopause or menopause, you have to be a lot more careful, because our systems are just a lot more sensitive. So really you have to listen to your body and not push through it if it's not working for you. There are other options. For example, people I can recommend doing wrist plunges where you just can get a bowl of cold water, ice water, and you just put your wrists in. That can be enough to still give you those benefits without it being so stressful on the body. People also do face plunges where they'll just put their face in the water and they can again get some of those good benefits.
Speaking about what you've said in terms of actually women having sensitive bodies, and I think it was on Wednesday where I was studying and I found myself actually drinking more water. I think it was 500 milliliters, 500 milliliters. Actually, it was more than that. And actually, I had to search. Okay, how many liters should a person actually drink? And I came upon this on Google. It says that 15.5 cups, 3.7 liters of fluid a day for men, about 11.5 cups, 2.7 liters of fluid a day for women. And it really shows that women's body, they are sensitive. And sometimes it's quite hard for us as men to actually comprehend that how much sensitive are women's body. So in a way of actually, my question is that what type of education would you actually give to men in terms of when it comes to actually realizing that women's body are sensitive when it comes to such things?
Listen to what a woman says. You need to believe her, believe her when she's talking about how she's feeling or how she's affected. Women are more sensitive. We're more sensitive to blue light. When we not only get all this blue light and all of these signals from the sun or the light through our eyes, but we also get it through our skin. And women's skin is thinner than men's skin. So women tend to be more affected by blue light. They're more affected by the non-native EMFs, which are dehydrating us and affecting our mitochondrial function as well.
And still on the conversation of circadian rhythm, and again, it's something that I've actually gotten a new perspective on it. Definitely, the more I believe that the more the conversation you speak about, the more you actually have a different view, a different perspective. And when it comes to actually telling your clients this lifestyle of circadian rhythm, what is their initial response, in the initial reaction towards this?
I think when people really sit and listen, it's kind of this, it's like a obvious, like, oh yeah, obvious. We're animals. We're supposed to be in living in tune with the cycles of nature. We're supposed to be outside taking in sun every day. We're supposed to be drinking water that comes from the earth, that's mineralized and clean. We're not supposed to be sitting in front of artificial light all day. And so it's this dichotomy, but like, oh yeah, duh, it's so simple. And something so simple can still be difficult.
Same goes with that, taking those cold plunges. And in a way, sometimes just putting that face is actually harder than because sometimes it's cold water. I have this intimidation of saying that, yeah, I'm not scared of you. And and also you become so scared that flip, I won't touch that. And there were days that actually said, flip, I miss warm water. I miss warm water. Let me just, and in my mind keep telling myself, nah, you said you were gonna do this. And in some ways, sometimes we don't want to betray ourselves. And it's something that I I try by any means to not betray myself, because it takes me back to a quote by Dostoevsky, where he says that the worst sin is that you have destroy and betray yourself. And when it comes to such things, and when want a better mental well-being, when you want to actually just change your life, because changing your life is doing the thing, and being able to say that no, I will able to listen to Joanna and take this circadian rhythm lifestyle, because it's not an easy lifestyle, and definitely consistency plays a huge role. So how does that work for you in towards your clients? Consistency.
So I think that the thing about it is that when clients start doing it, they can immediately feel different. And then it motivates them. They can immediately, if they just say, okay, let's get you some dark glasses, and I want you to put them on at night when the sun goes down. They will immediately sleep better. And once a woman in perimenopause starts sleeping better, her hot flashes get better. Her mood gets better. So because the positive effects are so immediate, people come back and they want more. Okay, great. Now I feel so good. And I'm like, okay, well, let's get you making more dopamine. Go outside in the morning sun. You're going to turn, this morning sun is going to trigger you to make tryptophan, and that tryptophan is going to turn into serotonin, and you're going to start get more serotonin in your gut. Your gut health is going to improve. Your mood is going to improve, because all from that sunrise sun is starting. It's the code. It's the algorithm that's going to get you to make tryptophan, serotonin, and melatonin at night.
And I'm just thinking, and you spoke about dopamine, and one of the things that I was surprised to hear about dopamine, actually dopamine towards taking those cold plunges, taking those cold showers, the fact that the levels of dopamine that you receive from actually taking a cold shower is compared to a cocaine dopamine. And instead of actually staying a short time, but it takes longer. And it's something that I really blew out my mind, and don't understand that if this thing is true, why are people actually so don't want to do it? Why people are willing to be in that comfortable place and just actually settle for these little dopamines, and in terms of taking in terms of those drugs, having these types of addiction just to actually elevate the dopamine in terms of have a healthier life. And talk about a healthier life. When it comes to women, to clients that you actually came across, and they have problems with menopause and perimenopause, how in what state you see that die in mentally, psychological?
Say that again. What's the
what's the state that you actually see them in mentally and psychological when they
first
actually
start working with you, or after?
Before they work with you in a way of
So a lot of them, it's this similar to what I felt. It's this feeling very lost of like you've had a lobotomy. Who am I? Who have I become? I hate everyone. I'm annoyed by everyone. I don't have patience. I don't recognize my body. I've gained weight. I'm depressed. I'm rageful and hateful and full of guilt because of I can't control my emotions. I can't sleep. It can be a very deep, dark place where you feel the age range in which women commit the most suicide correlates to when women are going through perimenopause.
And can go on.
Oh, and it's been in the past. You go to your doctor and you explain how you're feeling, and the first thing that they do is say, okay, well, here's a sleeping pill and here's an SSRI. And that is a very clear moment in my journey when I realized I was depressed and anxious because I had had my ovaries removed. And I thought, holy moly, how many women are feeling depressed and anxious? And it's 100% because of their hormones. But no one is taking that hormone into consideration. Instead, they're just like, oh, you're just depressed. Take this medication. Luckily, that's starting to change. And doctors are realizing that the first line of defense for depression and anxiety for women in their 40s should be to look at their hormones. That's the first thing that we should be doing. Not just putting them on SSRIs. Because studies also show women who have a history of anxiety or depression who are currently on SSRIs, when they go through perimenopause, those drugs aren't as effective anymore. And they increase the dose, and they're still not as effective anymore because of the effect that estrogen has on the brain and how our brain functions. So first line of defense for women should for any of us should be to look at our hormones. Look at all hormones. Look at our cortisol. Look at our leptin. Look at our melatonin. Look at our dopamine, our serotonin. All of these hormones, they all play this beautiful dance. It's an orchestra. And who is the conductor? The sun is the conductor of this orchestra of our body. The timing. When this instrument plays, when that instrument plays, when you start the show, when you end the show, it's all orchestrated by the sun.
And you spoke about sleeping pills and these doctors increasing the dosages of these drugs. And one would actually realize that actually that's the reason why there's a lot of use of drugs when it comes to people who want to sleep. I myself struggled with sleeping before, and it became a problem to such a point that I started actually listening to actually those white noises and try to make myself sleep. From there, I moved to sleeping pills. And I believe at some point that I almost got addicted. Every night I would actually drink those pills. And I don't know what happened. I was able actually to let them go and sleep. And again, had that problem until I actually started to take cold showers. And from that day, things have changed. So what I'm trying to get at is the fact that it goes to that thing that I said, that doctors don't focus on the root cause. They focus on the symptoms because they actually, in a way of, sometimes they prioritize other type of, I would say, other types of conditions. For example, for it's for women having problems with menopause and perimenopause. They would say, nah, you're just depressed, just take the pill. And actually, at some point that sometimes they actually don't, in a way of trying to actually learn about these hormonal imbalances. And it's something that, as much as there are so many research papers out there, but in terms of the true experience women actually deal with in terms of in the hospitals, those doctors don't read those articles, and it's our in a way of through these types of platforms of podcasts about mental health, podcasts about actually educating people what is perimenopause, what is menopause, and what is PMS, what are these things, what is circadian rhythm, what impact it, what kind of impact does it have on your body. We realize that, oh flip, instead of going to the doctor, I can take the holistical approach, something that we actually myself wasn't aware of, this holistic approach, and being able to say, okay, let me follow this holistic circadian rhythm lifestyle, and definitely I will see that since this person actually, I heard Joanna on Mental Metal saying that, oh flip, this thing is good for you, and let me try it, and only to find out people will actually have a different life, and in a way of, I would say, in terms of lifestyle will change, because you'll realize that there are things that you need to actually just eliminate in your life, things that you actually saw as coping mechanisms, and those definitely when I say coping mechanism, bad coping mechanism, such as things like alcohol, drugs, because some people actually, most of the time I believe that women actually utilize wine in a way of trying to actually get that sleep, not only realizing that sometimes you could drink that one glass of wine, at some point the wine won't be enough.
Well, and
There's
the
how,
study shows that
yeah.
the wine actually, it suppresses your melatonin. You're not getting as good a sleep. Same with the sleeping pills. You're not releasing all your melatonin. You're not getting good sleep when you take those sleeping pills. And you don't want to be using melatonin exogenously either, because that, after a while, it's gonna mess with your natural properties. One of the things that's really great is when I start working with clients and we're focusing, whether we're focusing on, a lot of times we focus on, okay, let's educate you. What do you know about menopause? How do we get you a medical provider who understands menopause, so that if you decide to do hormone replacement therapy, they understand, they know how to administer that. When we get into then implementing things, whether it's even making an appointment to go to your doctor, or women will get their prescription and then they don't actually start taking their hormone replacement therapy, or we start talking about these lifestyle shifts and there is a block for them where they aren't dedicating the time to wake up 10 minutes earlier to go outside for 10 minutes, where they're not taking the break from work to go out onto the patio for 10 minutes. This is where the real magic happens, because that's the emotional mastery part of the work. This is where we get to dig down deep into, where are these blocks coming in for them that are preventing them from making these changes in their life that they say they want. And then that's where we get to dig into these blocks that they have, these ideas that they have, these stories that they have about who they are and the way that they move through the world, that are getting in the way of them making progress, whether it's figuring out how to help themselves through perimenopause, or a handful of other situations in their life that they are wanting to make change and they're not moving forward.
And it's something that, again, sometimes change can be terrible, and change isn't easier. When I speak about change, I'm still on a conversation of actually taking these other things, sleeping pills, wines, all that type of stuff, and realize that no, a person will say that I'm used to this, and only to realize that this person started to sleeping pills, and now they have moved to wine, and not realizing that they were able to do that negative change, jumping to this so-called, I would say, so-called coping mechanism, but unable to actually jump into a positive one, being able to actually look things in a holistic perspective. And actually, I really wanted this actually I think my wish has been granted in a way because I wanted this conversation to be an hour long. Because really, I am enjoying the conversation. Really enjoying the conversation, and it's a conversation that I myself, as I've said, that has been speaking about, and in a way of, we have combined two conversations that I once spoke about it separately, but made it as one thing, as something that you don't see every day. And yeah, and sometimes I actually look at myself and ask myself, I am that person that actually started talking about mental health in a perspective of depression or depression and anxiety only, and not actually branching out. Look at me now. I'm talking about perimenopause and menopause and something that, and circadian rhythm. It's something that to me it's quite fascinating. And what would you actually want the audience to take out of this conversation today? Especially women.
Yeah. You don't need to be scared about perimenopause and menopause. You can control the way that you feel as long as you're open to making the changes in your lifestyle that you learn will benefit you. Perimenopause is a time when your emotions and the essence of who you are, what you want, they come to the surface. I was talking about this recently. As a woman, we are taught once we start menstruating and we start going through these emotional cycles every month, we're taught that, well, you're just hormonal. Calm down. Why are you so emotional? You're just being hormonal. In a couple of days, you'll feel better. And so our whole lives, we're taught that those emotions that arise are just crazy and that if we wait a couple of days, we'll feel better. So we're taught to suppress our emotions because it's just hormones and then dismiss it and move on. When in reality, those emotions are our real insecurities, our fears, our needs, and our wants. Instead, we should be taught, yes, you are feeling emotional right now. Take note of how you feel. This is how you feel. Look deep into how you feel. And when you're not in this heightened state, go back and assess and problem solve and see what your body, what your emotions were trying to tell you that you need and want and should do. When you're in perimenopause, you're back in that place of your emotions rise to the surface. The essence of who you are and what you want rises to the surface. And we should not be dismissing it as you're just crazy, you're just in perimenopause. This is the time to say, I know who I am, I know what I want, and I'm going to make the changes to listen to this essence of who I am. And I find that women who are really ready to face that, to face their fears, their insecurities, and the way that they want to move through the world, this is the best time of their lives. You can really step into who you are, all the wisdom of all of the past, the mistakes that you've made, the things that you've ignored, the people that you've let take advantage of you, you know, the people pleasing, the lack of self-worth, all of those things come to a head. And it's like, okay, I get a choice. I can keep ignoring the essence of who I am and be miserable, or say like, heck no, like, look it, I'm here and I'm ready to enjoy. We're only halfway through our lives. I'm here and I'm ready to grab life by the ovaries and keep going and make the best life.
Never had that. Never had that one.
You have to make a conscious choice. And I feel like that's part of it. It's like all of this part of who we are, it's going to be right in your face, and you have to make those choices. Am I going to deal with this? Or am I just going to I'm going to keep pushing it away? Those who choose to deal with it, who stand up for what they know they deserve, who feel empowered by all of their life experience, they thrive. And so that's what we do in the coaching. And sometimes, like of course, sometimes it's through that back door of like, well, why aren't you doing this self-care thing? And from there, it's like we dig down deep into all these stories they have about why they don't deserve it, or why, that's selfish and da-da-da-da. And that opens up all these other areas of their life once they get through those blocks.
And definitely, as myself, as in terms of women, you are being emotional. It's not that deep, and we like saying that thing of it's not that deep, only to realize that actually you actually don't understand what she's going through. And definitely, our conversation has shown me that. And definitely, I will be more compassionate, and definitely now I understand the reason why most women actually feel the way they are feeling. And when they tell you that they need you, they don't just in a way of doing it out of pity, out of actually wanting your full attention, but also want you to listen. And where can people get you? And definitely they will love to. I myself, in terms of interested in terms of learning more about you in a way of trying to reach you on social media, where people can get you.
Yeah, so I'm mostly on Instagram at navigate.menopause. And then I have my website is navigatemenopause.com. And for anyone who listens to this podcast, I'm offering a free additional session when they sign up for my Master Menopause Method, which is a 12-session program over 4 months.
And Joanna, thank you so much for being here. Really, I appreciate the conversation. Love the conversation. In all honesty, to be honest with you, I'm actually prepared a lot of questions, bound of questions, actually trying to learn more about this, only to find out that I didn't need those questions. And I feel like one question that played a huge role was the first one that I asked you. And it actually got me to actually know you more and know what your mission. And definitely I applaud you that the mission that you are on is very important. And as much as some people call them some people call themselves feminists, but they are not doing the work in terms of, in a way of, they actually looking at the wrong battle. Sometimes the way to actually to help other women is actually help them with their health, because health is important. And you can't actually, in terms of, yeah, I understand some things are important, but individually health is important. And it's something that I saw to myself when I actually decided, no, I want to make a change. I want to actually start taking care of myself. So you are someone that actually does that in a way of trying to actually doing that education, trying to teach women about perimenopause and menopause, and actually realizing that it's not a bigger deal if you actually follow the circadian rhythm lifestyle. Because I feel like it should be the only lifestyle that we should be following, in terms of not actually going to actually follow this lifestyle of eating too much, eating that things that are not good for us, things like that. So actually I am yapping a lot. So I just want to say thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate your time. Really appreciate your insights. And I actually enjoyed our conversation today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I had a wonderful time, and I hope to keep in touch.